Hello, welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Shwarga Bhattacharjee. Hi, Shwarga. How are you today?
Doing good, Craig. Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Like normal, I want to start off sharing some works of yours. Hold on, let me get back to the beginning here. And to be able to give people an idea of the kind of work that you do. So I went on to your website and I selected a few images of which you have no idea what's coming at you. But these are images that I thought were just standout pieces of yours. So this one in particular features heavily on your website. Can you tell me a little bit about this piece?
Sure. I came to Philly to do my MFA, and I went to Tyler. So I made this painting for my thesis show in around like 2018. Um, at that time, I was thinking about, my root, my identity coming from South Asia, Bangladesh. I was really wanted to use the resources, the images that I have, and you know, um, I'm coming from a Hindu family, so a lot of god and goddesses, a lot of mythological stories that I grew up with. And I was thinking, like I still do actually, I still think about the relevance of the mythology and our contemporary life. Um, so this particular painting kind of talked about, and the the time I was at the school, I get to know about the gender conflict that was ongoing, that is still ongoing, and in Hindu mythology, gender fluidity have been talked about like 1,000 years ago, and I
Right.
was thinking like, we're that advanced, or what, like the culture I'm coming from, they talked about it,
Hmm.
you know there is god and goddesses. They're like half female and half male, and that's what this painting talks about. It talks about Lord Krishna.
Hmm.
I'm not particularly religious. I'm just referring those myths, and I'm trying to connect those ideas to my life and what I've been seeing. And the story of Lord Krishna deals with, being male and female at the same time
Hmm.
as a god. God is not like only
Right.
male, only female.
Hmm.
So, and also, the texture I've been creating, the spray paint, I started using this texture after seeing the trash bins in Philly. So, that's kind of like also a reference that what I have gathered around from my surrounding. It
So,
also has a story that I kind of like distort all these, textures on the back have different words. That's actually reference from the mythology that I've been using, but I distort them so people can follow through.
well, the what struck me about this piece is, I read about you, the background that you have, the cultural identity that you're bringing into these pictures. But what really struck me is your invention of mark making in this is so different. It's so modernized at the same time that you're really telling almost like two stories at the same time here. I mean, you have this background within these pictures, but I'm seeing all of these different. I mean, I guess it's just me, but these references to other cultural touchstones. Like I can't help but see abstract expressionism, symbolism, cave art. The idea of these little heads really. The first thing that struck me was, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of David Sally, but his idea of his layering of different ideas to create a new
Yeah.
identity. It was just prevalent in it. As a painter, I really absorbed this piece quite a lot because the more I looked into it, the deeper it got. So it was a wonderful piece in that regard.
Thank you so
But
much.
but I want to move on because you vary your works quite differently. Now I know that this is different sort of time periods, but your mark making, like I see you searching for a new language. Maybe
Abs-
I'm just, am I
no,
overstating it or is that right?
no, I think that's right. I think that's every painter, I felt you're absolutely right. I started with the idea of identity, that who am I? And, I felt that coming from a very specific culture, where in West we don't see artists from our part of the world, and basically I would say like when I was growing up, I went to my undergrad. I looked the book I had was from Western art. I grew up watching Rembrandt, Van Gogh, abstract expressionism, cubism, Picasso. One thing struck me that the in the art history we don't see artists from South Asia or other parts of the world. That's needed to be changed. I think it's changing gradually, but another way, I can't deny seeing Van Gogh. I
Mm-hmm.
can't say that I don't love Van Gogh, because I can't say that adore Francis Bacon,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in me. That's the point of it.
Mm-hmm.
That being an artist, you know, I'm getting inspired by other artists, which
Mm-hmm.
is like very different culturally and in a lot of other sense, but still I'm getting intrigued by the art,
Mm-hmm.
and
You're a
I do
you're a
think,
sponge.
right, I think every artist are like a sponge,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm absorbing, and I'm at certain point I felt, you know, that I want to be, if I want to be an artist, I want to be part of this language. I want to be part of this history.
Mm-hmm.
Why I disclose myself with Rembrandt and Van Gogh? They're part of me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they're my teacher. They were my teacher at
Yeah.
certain point. So
There's some of
definitely
your teachers.
right.
I mean, they're not all, right?
They're
Yeah.
not
No,
all.
I get it. You know, and I do see. I love the idea that you're bringing in your culture, which in Western art is not something that most people come across. But I see this more as the way Picasso absorbed African art to
Right.
create something new. You're doing the same thing, but you have a different sensibility on it. So it's, you have the plus of being able to see wide varieties of cultures and sort of boiling them down. And it's fascinating to me what's coming apart here in these pictures, because you're using, not only are you using modern vernacular in terms of your mark making, you're also using modern tools. The idea that you're incorporating like spray paint into these, I mean, that's extremely well. It is modern, but it's also dates back to the cave painting of them spraying their hands, right? So it's kind of both. It's a new take on an old version. What in particular is this piece about?
So, the painting, the previous one and this one, actually, I started making them after grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, I don't had any studio at that time. And I was buying the cheapest materials I could, and and the other one also I bought it in on a deal from Michael's, and then um, I was actually working in a shared apartment, and that I all had, and me and my wife were living in one single room at that time. And then, I was working on the street. I would take these canvases and outside, I would pour these layers and I'll let them dry, and then I will take them back. And by doing it, you'll see that a lot of areas of these canvases, like if I was working in the winter, they will have crystallization. They'll
Mm.
have a texture of, the only the cold weather crystallizing, the pouring water on the canvas, and that really here, I was working on it in summer, so I was still pouring different layers, and it's like a mix of oil and acrylic. And I was just going wild, I was thinking about, the political situation too. The things were happening in the West, and still we're not in a stable situation in any way, globally.
Mm-hmm.
And in some way, I was thinking like, what's happening to us? We're creating these monsters. Like, if somebody is, you know, ruling us,
Mm-hmm.
actually, we're creating these situations. It's not like coming out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, through the history, we saw these things happening, and as a human, we know that, definitely understand the class system, the political system, the hierarchy of, like, um, bourgeois versus proletarian, but still, like, what we're supporting, what we're kind of like the conflict between general people. In a way, this society is creating these situations.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was like, actually, even if we think like I'm isolated from making any decision, probably not. We're, as a society, creating these monsters. And also, I was thinking about abstract expressionism through these paintings, and
Mm-hmm.
I like, the idea of like something being past actually is not true. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we can reuse it. There is a relevance of a conversation that happened in the painting.
Mm-hmm. I definitely see where works like these then, you know, gave rise to these kind of works, right? This is later. This
This is actually
is this way
uh
early.
early, yeah. It's actually in grad school.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Interesting.
These
It's
are
backwards. All right.
yeah. I think that these were kind of like one of the last paintings that I was making in the grad school,
Okay.
and I think the 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 conflict I was having is like how much control I can have with the painting. How
Uh-huh.
much I should control it, how much I should let it be what it is.
Did you start with figures, like a figurative work, but then you slid into more complete abstraction, but then you kind of go back, or do you always sort of teeter with the two?
I think that's another great question, actually. I went to my undergrad was like, a British curriculum, so very much like, academic curriculum. So I actually, trained in realistic painting, and I was really good in undergrad. And that was kind of the point, like, oh, okay, you can make these like amazing realistic paintings, and your brush strokes and color mixing, all these are like, top notch. But all of a sudden I felt like, this is like, these are more skill oriented, and then I want to be free. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the song, I want to be free, but eventually I felt like maybe, I don't want to leave my skills totally. I want to kind of have a mix. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like drawing, so I feel myself like I'm more than a drawer than painter. I don't know, because I start with a drawing,
Mm-hmm.
and I would make like multiple, layouts before I start the painting. So a lot of drawings with figures and a lot of different ideas. I kind of combine them, and then I gradually get into abstract point. I don't see it as an abstract, but kind of give the painting its own freedom, its own voice, like wherever it takes me to.
I mean, I think most people would see this as a painting. I see it as a drawing. I see that you're drawing with paint. I can see that underlying structure in there. This piece struck me because it was, you have a couple of pieces where you're using multiple panels to create one larger image. Was that out of necessity, or was that out of desire to do it?
Both.
Okay.
Actually, these are my Survive series. I call them Survive series,
Uh-huh.
and these happens, when I actually like don't have a studio, ran out of all the canvases I had, and then I, felt like canvases like the stretchers are expensive to store,
Right.
and then I felt like what I can do. I feel the urge I had, like I have to survive as an artist first, then otherwise I'm not surviving at all.
I'm curious.
And
I'm curious at a piece like this, how much of this, say this particular piece, how much of this is driven in its creation by, say, a storyline that you have in your head versus how much of it is experimentation and discovery? The final picture.
I think it's more like a mix, it's like a
Okay.
mixture. And I feel like,
Is is the storyline still driving it though?
it does, because the storyline of it is actually the image of the statue that the statue of Saddam Hussein
Mm-hmm.
in Iraq, when it was falling down, like that, uh, like exact moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the power dynamics and the global politics, everything came down to that point, like and um because it's fascinating to me, because even if you think about in a lot of other countries, like the the political situations are not stable,
Mm-hmm.
and Saddam Hussein at one point, he was there, like nobody thought of like he's like giving up the power or anything. But it's a very complex image,
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, in all layer with all layers and history and situations. It's like a very complex image, and I
That's what
was
I'm.
making.
That's what I'm drawn to because it transcends, an event. It tells a larger story, I think, and I
It
appreciate that.
does. It does.
And then finally, this particular piece, which when I first saw it, all I saw was maps, but there's something else going on here. What else? What am I missing in this piece?
Actually, these are maps. These
Okay.
are maps of Philadelphia,
Okay.
actually. Yeah, because I feel like, where I'm living, it should have some. I think my art has so much to do with my experience that I'm going through. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think more of like, I saw that like Picasso, Rembrandt, they had that kind of, kind of like attitude, like whatever the painting, their feelings kind of attached with it. And the panels you're seeing, actually, even the previous one, these are actually, papers that I collected from the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
These are like hard papers from that comes with the electrical equipments.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought, at that time, I don't have a space, had a space, so I bought those like baking pans, and I
Mm-hmm.
was making those kind of like square forms out of those baking pans, so I can store them
Mm-hmm.
easily, and then I could work them in like single panels at a time, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to, have a huge canvas, then like wait somewhere and see the canvas. Like I don't have that luxury at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was trying to sort out like how can I continue, and
Yeah.
the result of it, and the faces you'll see them, there were like eyes and like mouth shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that I started from a grad school. Like it's a face of a monster from South Asian mask that I saw. It's like a dance mask. The character is Ravana, and it's like a monster character. You know, so I kind of distorted that mask image and then reused it into my painting.
Fascinating. This is definitely the kind of work that you actually need to see in person. I mean, I can kind of get it from the digital image, but I'm sure in person it provides a completely different context. So I want to start asking you about your beginnings in art, and in particular, um, Was there anything when you were younger that sort of was a moment where you were engaged in art or something that just sort of flipped a switch?
Absolutely. I think I kind of shared that story. Um, it's like I was not a good student when I was in school, and I was kind of lost. I felt like, like everybody is trying to be something. I don't know what I can be, and um, I was like really doing bad in maths and other subjects. And my mom, she was a doctor, you know, and she kind of like she was trying to save me at that time, and she was telling like, okay, you draw really well, you can be a good artist. There are like all great artists like Picasso, and she named another artist from Bangladesh, Janul Abidin. He's like a real famous one, and I didn't know it was a good draw. I was drawing well or not, but I trusted her, so
Mhm.
she was kind of like she kind of switched my life from like that frustration, and I decided that okay, maybe I can be an
Did she?
artist.
So she really helped light the fire, I guess.
True, absolutely, and that kind of still going, so
Yeah.
and
I'm curious about your creative process. So when you're now in the studio and you're going to make a new work, um, how much of your work is planned out either in your mind or in sketches beforehand versus how much leeway do you give yourself to experiment and discover? Where's that balance?
so I think it's kind of like a half and half in a
Hmm.
way, because I definitely start with some plannings. And you're right that a lot of these works are like experimentation.
Hmm.
And I kind of like, I feel like if I'm not taking risk with my paintings, that I'm not, and at certain point I feel like I want to create my own voice through this. And I think that's one of my goal.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these experiments I would like apply it into the canvas, and sometimes they might work, sometimes they might not. And what happened with these processes, like the idea would start with might not support the images that would happen, because I'm relying on a lot of accident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of happy accidents.
Happy accident depends,
Right.
a lot
Well,
of
yeah. Well, you
bad
scrub out the
accidents.
ones that aren't happy, right?
Right.
So what is it about the materials that you use? Because for a couple of years now, you've been with acrylics and some water-based paints, but there's some spray paints, there's some masking going on. What is it about the materials that you currently use that you like so much that you keep using them?
I feel like, my a lot of my ideas actually came from, artists from the abstract expressionism era, you know, and Jack Whitten and Sam Gone. Those are like African American artists. Also, Mark Bradford. A lot of these African American artists kind of, their process kind of inspired me. Like, abstraction can be
Mm-hmm.
just like, like a one we can it's not a one linear history. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there are
Yeah,
like
I can see where those materials naturally, have a tendency to give you the textures that you so use. I mean, even the texture that's behind you is so rich and so thick. But it really it's a delicious process. Um, how over the years, how do you think your work has changed?
I think it's evolving,
Okay.
with the materials. I've been using oxide pigments.
Hmm.
I'm using like papers from the street. I'm using spray paint.
Okay. You sound
I'm
like a Rauschenberg. Like his
right. I felt Rauschenberg freed us. Like
hmm.
he kind of free like gave the artist the leverage, like use whatever. Like I could use a goat or chicken. I
Hmm.
don't know. Like
Well, I'd love to see what would happen when in say 10 years time when you have the studio that you've always wanted, what kind of work your work would actually come into. Um, so I am curious, on your site, you do show lots of, works on paper, works on canvas. Have you ever used or experimented with other types of mediums, say sculpture, photography, poetry, anything like that?
I did tried some sculpture. I've been working on sculptures recently.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
I'd look
but
forward to seeing those.
sure, I feel like, I'm trying to expand myself. I'm also working on animations. Um, I think, painting is something that trained up with, but like I'm interested in other mediums too. I'm open with the idea of painting itself.
Hmm.
So
I'm curious. So I've got time for really just two questions, but they're bigger questions. The one is, talk to me about color, because you have a very specific palette.
mm,
When you go to approach a new work, does color enter into your mind? Do you force color, or does it just come naturally? What do you think about
I think everything started from the idea of the painting. I think I had two paintings in my and I made two paintings last year. They were like complete red,
color? Hmm.
and I was thinking about blood a lot. I felt like all after all the conflict, the relation with a person, with the land, and as a person, at the core, we all are Homo sapiens. So all this the paintings were like heavily red, and I was using iron, because blood has a lot of iron. So story has a lot to do with the colors that I'm deciding.
That's
Um, and
fascinating. So it is a conscious effort in your mind
it's a
to,
conscious
to
effort.
think, because I assume in that regard you're using color to manipulate the viewer, their emotions or their.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, I would go with more with I would say like drawing come first,
Hmm.
and then I decide the colors. Sometimes I'm not that conscious with the colors. Maybe I should probably a little more. But
We'll
you
see.
know, um, I start with something that intrigued me first, and then rest of the things comes with that idea.
That's great. So I love it when artists can give me, sort of snapshots in their thinking, and it changes the way I view their work. And that's definitely happened today. I've got time for just one last question I ask all artists. What does making art do for you?
That's a very complex question. We're doing it. I think, we're making art because I can say for myself, I'm not making tons of money out of it, but it's part of my identity. I
Okay.
felt if I don't make art, then I'm not the person who I am. And I don't know where it will take me. At this point, I'm not worried about any of these things. I'm like making it so with the hope that maybe future generation will get something out of it or not. But I want to say these things. I want to tell these stories. I want to share that I I exist.
Hmm.
It's me, and if I'm not making it, then who am I? I
What
don't
happens
even.
when you're not making it? So have you ever gone through a long stretch?
Yeah, I think like I got crazy probably. I feel like my wife knows that I start like, I don't know, I do crazy stuff. I continuously tell her like, like I need to go back to my studio,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
You're
know.
not the only one. So I get that a lot. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming by today to talk to me about your work. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank everybody else who tuned in to watch today. We really love it when you do that, especially if you like, share, and subscribe. And of course, if you have comments, we want to hear what you think about the art show series and about Shwarga's work. So you leave a message in the comment section. And if it's something that if you have a question I can't answer, I can always easily pass it along. So again, thank you so much for coming by to talk to me today about your work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's my pleasure. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to share my ideas and thoughts, and my
Now
story.
I've got more questions now, so we'll have another conversation later on. That's great. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.